This video lesson is a review of how to input your evidence from Romeo and Juliet into your paragraph in such a way that it makes sense to your reader. The first thing you're going to want to make sure that you do is just copy the section of the text that you want to refer to in your paragraph directly into your paper, matching the font to Times New Roman 12 if that's the font that you're doing for the rest of your paper, but also making sure that since this is Shakespeare and it's written in verse, that you match the lines according to Shakespeare's original intent. Because in a more advanced discussion of what you are quoting here, you may actually want to refer to some of what's called enjambment or the rhythm or the rhyme. As you get more advanced in your studies, you're going to want to keep that in mind. So I've chosen this piece of evidence here with Friar Lawrence and Romeo talking to one another, and it is 4 lines long. So I have both options available to me. In general, the rule is that you're going to want to cite your evidence in line if it is 4 or less. If you have 4 or more, then you might want to turn to block quoting. Since Romeo and Juliet is a play, it might make sense to do block quoting as well because you can clearly notate the characters and when they speak. To do block quoting, once you copy the text in, make sure that you don't use any quotation marks because the formatting of the indentation is the indication that it is a quote, and then make sure that you take the whole section and slide it in so that it is indented 1 inch from the left-hand margin. If you like, it is acceptable depending on your text. If your original text uses all caps, it might make sense to put the characters in all caps for even more clarity. My text that I happen to use for this happened to do it in bold, and so in this case that's also acceptable. Sometimes you'll notice that because Shakespeare is paying attention to the pentameter, you might see sometimes that a line starts indented even more, and that's because the line up above might be the first part of that meter. So the 2 characters speaking together, like the love sonnet between Romeo and Juliet, the fact that they're speaking together might be the poetry. If you have that special case, then you're going to want to pay attention to that. You could use the tab key to make sure that you have still correctly copied over Shakespeare's original words so that you are acknowledging his original intent. So this is how to do block quoting. It's a good solution, but it's not a perfect solution because the problem with block quoting is you're now taking up lots of space with work that isn't yours. This is Shakespeare's work, and the prominent focus or predominant focus of your paper should be what you have to say on what Shakespeare's original words were, not just letting Shakespeare speak for himself. It needs to be split between you both. So the other way to do this would be to do some more context work. So I'm going to back this up back to the original that I had. All right, so I have a conversation between Friar Lawrence and Romeo, and I might think this conversation is important. So I do want to get both characters talking to one another. So I might go to my context, and I might decide to set it up by Friar Lawrence relents to Romeo and tells him, notice how I am relents, tells, I'm staying in the present tense, and then I'm going to take Friar Lawrence's words and turn it into a dialogue between the 2 characters, as if I'm writing my own bit of fiction. All right, now because I'm in line, I still need to acknowledge that Shakespeare is writing in verse, so I'm going to mark the line breaks with a slash. All right. And this is perfectly okay here because I'm not done citing my evidence. So I don't necessarily need to take a break to get the lines yet, because a good reader will acknowledge, as long as you're doing your job as a writer, that you're clearly staying in one moment in the text. So there's no reason to get to the citation yet. We can keep doing some more creative context. I think that when Romeo says this line, I think that he's kind of excited. So I'm going to say, Romeo excitedly agrees to the plan and responds, and then I take his line. Now that I'm done, and I'm not going to do any more lines from this section, now I'm going to take that break that I need to take and put in the proper citation and make sure that the period goes on the outside to really indicate that from here to here, I am including both context and evidence. If you do something like this, that's a pretty advanced move. But it's a good move because it gives you a good author voice, and it also shows how much you understand what's going on in that moment of the text, and it keeps your writing interesting to read and smooth to follow. Since this is all one paragraph, you want to make sure that your formatting would look like that. If it was block quoting, we also want to pay attention to that. I'm going to go back to the block quote example. And if you choose to do a block quote with a heavy construction, make your own construction noises. Make sure that when you pick up your paragraph again, because this commentary right here, whatever you write here, should be commentary that you're making based on what you've observed in this evidence. So because of that, you want to make sure that you're not starting a new paragraph. An indent would indicate a new paragraph to your reader. So you're not done talking about that evidence. And we don't end paragraphs with evidence. We end paragraphs with thoughts and connections. So make sure that if you do block quoting, the next line does not start with an indent. Okay? Some students wanted me to review in depth how to correctly format evidence from Shakespeare, and hopefully this video helps you do that.